Welcome back, Sherlockians. Today on this Sherlock After Show, we talk about serial killers and crazy siblings. Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to AFTERBUZZ TV. We are here doing the Sherlock After Show, Season 4, Episode 2, The Lying Detective. Very ominous.
It's like this music.
Just like this, it's very apropos. I'm your host, Marisa Serafini. You can follow me on Twitter at SeraphiniTV. Joining me, I have a lovely panel once again.
I'm Drexel Heard. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Drexel Heard.
I'm Megan Salinas. You guys can tweet at me at the Menguin. That's TheMenguin.
Hey everybody, I'm Timothy Michael. You can follow me on all social media platforms at I am Timothy Mike.
Yes, all right, excellent. Episode 2, here we are again, The Lying Detective. Real quick thoughts. What were your thoughts of this episode? Drexel, let's start with you.
I loved it. I mean, this was we talked about Moriarty in the first episode and whether we thought he was going to come back, because the first episode didn't really have a foe. Like it didn't really. We had an antagonist had an ominous foe.
But it was more like the past coming back to haunt you.
And now we actually get a situation where Sherlock has another person to have to deal with, because we didn't get that in Abominable Bride either. So this is the first time we've had somebody that Sherlock has to deal with one-on-one.
Yeah. There's nothing more terrifying than a serial killer with money. That... it's funny that they brought up H.H. Holmes in this episode because, that is literally the scariest thing, is a serial killer who has a means of killing and a means of getting rid of the bodies, and I think they really executed that whole premise really well.
Yeah, I agree that this episode, and, Sherlock said it better himself, what's scarier than a serial killer with unlimited resources, and that's exactly what Culverton had, and we'll touch up on that, but Culverton Smith as a villain in this episode I thought was so on point.
Good.
And so fantastic. And like I said, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but this episode was on fire.
Yes, I really liked this episode. I think right out the gate, I thought the cinematography for this particular episode was phenomenal. I mean, every episode is already high production value, but I think the certain camera angles and that purposely made you on edge or literally offsite, and because we get the moments where Sherlock is drugged out, and we get all these different types of crazy angles that purposefully, get you off, not feeling right.
I didn't. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I don't know how I felt about the editing because I know that they were trying to portray, his drug-induced state of mind, but cutting back and forth to Culverton. Out of context seemed like a really weird way of going about it. Again, I kind of know what they were going for, but I don't know how I felt about the execution.
You guys talked about the cinematography. Between this episode and the third episode, I think they did a little behind the scenes thing on
a little featurette,
which I thought was really cool. Kind of showed us how they filmed a lot of the really cool scenes. We'll talk about the car scene. We'll talk about the another Mind Palace situation that he was in, that he actually brought somebody into. Really, I think this is the first time, or at least from what I can remember, the first time there was somebody a part of this Mind Palace, which makes sense considering the character that he brought into the Mind Palace with him.
Yes, we'll definitely get into it. Let's start kind of near the beginning, and we'll do our best to cover everything, of course. But let's start with the Faith meeting. We see Sherlock in his flat talking to Faith. After the whole
quote-unquote faith.
Yeah.
Quote-unquote. Is there one? Okay, we'll kind of skipping to the end a little bit, not to jump forward.
It's kind of hard not to talk about the end when you talk about this intro scene.
Faith is pretty much the woman who kind of starts it all, because her father is actually Culverton Smith, who is now quote-unquote serial killer that Sherlock has publicly accused of. But this meeting with Faith, what did you think of this meeting? Because Sherlock kind of seemed out of character. Did you expect, as we see at the reveal at the end, did you expect Faith to be real or fake?
I thought that Faith was real. I didn't think that Faith was impersonating anybody. I really thought that was his daughter, especially going back from the flashbacks.
Yeah, here's a question. Is it, and granted, I only watched it once, so I wish I had time to go back and rewatch it, but is the actress who's playing Faith, in the scene with all the rest of the board members, is that the same actress who we see
At the hospital.
pretending to be Faith at the very end?
No.
Which is exactly why I
They
was
just
like,
look
in the
alike.
exactly, in the
Yeah.
flashbacks, I was like, I didn't catch on to it when I was watching the episode, and maybe I should have. I don't know why I didn't, looking back on it, but the stylist of Faith was very good at deceiving the audience, and I don't think that I think we were also deceived because we weren't concerned about Faith. We were really concerned about Sherlock, because Sherlock is in this, drug-induced downward spiral, and we're just coming off of the Mary getting shot and Mary dying. Like, I don't think that we as an audience are looking for, Faith. Does that Faith look exactly like the Faith in the flashbacks? And plus this was 3 years ago, so she might have aged.
And Sherlock even said with the picture on the phone, was like, you really let yourself go. So
Right.
it was like the physical differences were subtle enough for us to believe, oh yeah, this could still be the same person. She just physically changed.
But I also think as a viewer, we weren't focused on Faith. Not for me, I was not focused on Faith because of what had happened in the previous episode. I wasn't focused on Faith because the way that it was edited, we were focused on what she was writing. We were focused on what Culverton was saying to the people around the table. It was very blurry. There was a lot of things that kept us not focused on the person telling the story and the person that was in the flashback.
And there were very few. I don't think there were even any close-ups on her in the boardroom, and then when she was in Sherlock's office. I'm pretty sure they were all medium or wide shots, so you're not really getting a super good look at her.
They were. I love that how you bring that up, because there were many wide shots, and a lot of them, because I watched this episode a couple times, a lot of the shots were like kind of blurry because she's high on the medicine that they just injected her with. So physically, just
Right.
in the visual, it's already distorted for us. So we couldn't really get a clear delineation of what she actually looked like.
Right.
That being said, the first time I watched this scene, when you're watching this episode and you're seeing this scene for the first time, you're like, I actually really appreciated that Sherlock, like, it took Sherlock a little while before he caught up to his brain, and he actually did spend the whole night, talking with her and having chips with her, and I thought that was a scene, it didn't seem that out of character for him, at least from my perspective, because he is somebody who he's super high and he feels bad about John and Mary. So it makes sense that when he sees somebody who's as self-destructive as he is right now, that he would want to kind of circumvent that. That seemed fine to me. It's the reveal at the end of the episode where the more and more I think about it, the more and more I'm like, hey, wait a minute. That sort of thing.
I don't know if it was necessarily out of character for him, let me rephrase it. It was out of character for him, but not in the same way that my view was he was lonely.
Yeah.
He brought somebody in. Molly was icing him out. He no longer had Mary. Irene's not really all the women were out.
Yeah,
He didn't have a female out of his life.
Well,
and so
he didn't have friends in his life.
So the first person that needed him, he latched onto to the fact now he's walking through the streets of London.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think it was out of character. I mean, in the last episode, when we covered the last episode, we said that this season did tune in more into the emotional aspect of Sherlock. And if we remember the scene correctly, he did tell her to get out pretty fast. He was like, yeah, you can leave. Okay, I'm good. I got whatever I needed to get out from you. And then he noticed, how heavy her purse was, and then noticed that, she might not be all there, and then started to have sympathy for her. And I'm just bringing it back to what I said earlier, I think that has a lot to do with him reeling off of Mary's death. Like, you feel like you have one death on your hands. How would you feel about another one? And I think that's why he says, let's take a stroll around the park. Not just to solve the case, but to save this woman.
I really like this walk, and I think this is why I say it's slightly out of character, because he says, I'm going out with a friend, and
Mrs. Hudson's like, you don't have any friends.
But that's exactly, as terrible as that sounds, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, Sherlock doesn't have friends. Why would he say friends? So I personally, watching it the first time, I realized that this person is probably fake or imaginary. Especially, there was 2 moments where he was talking to the guy in the kitchen who was probably his drug dealer. We were like, who are you talking to? I was like, okay, that's a clear question. And then the second line, I'm going out with a friend. I'm like, no. Those are two clear things that, like, wouldn't happen.
I still call this, again, just given what we know at the end of the episode, I still call this a little bit of a cheat to the audience. And this is something that Sherlock does every now and then. Because we clearly see, the real Faith writing a note down. We clearly see her doing that, which doesn't add up when we see that the person pretending to be Faith fabricated a note for him. So that is an intentional cheat to the audience. So
that was actually the real note. She said it at the end.
No, she said, I concocted this little project for you.
Well, but no, when, like, not to jump to the end of the episode, when in the therapy session, when we get to the reveal.
I thought she said she engineered the note.
Yeah, she said Culverton gave Faith's original note, and a mutual friend put them together. So that note,
I was thinking that she then wrote a note herself, and I'm like, that's a
so
huge
that
cheat.
original note that the real Faith wrote actually did get into the hands of Sherlock, not by the real Faith, but by the one who's pretending to be Faith. Yes.
The something cast said he was self-destructive with a plan. He sensed that she was spiraling, which is why I felt he stayed with her out of character, yes, but not out of context of the situation.
I agree with that statement. Okay, so that kind of brings us into the whole Culverton Smith. He's the antagonist of this episode. Toby Jones. I mean, he's a great actor.
So good.
I liked him as an antagonist. I mean, I think obviously our biggest antagonist of the whole Sherlock series is obviously going to be Moriarty, but I think he did a great job of portraying kind of a crazy, like mentally kind of.
I feel bad for this guy because I feel like I'm always seeing him cast as a villain in some capacity.
He was, to go back to the first episode when we did it together, and I brought in a Harry Potter reference. I'll bring in another one. He was Toby Jones, the voice of Dobby, the house elf.
But I'm talking about like in non-voiceover related roles. I feel like the only time I've seen him not be a bad guy is in like the Hunger Games, and even then he's like that's morally ambiguous.
Yeah. But he's just got that creeper face too.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's why
I like
feel
Toby Jones, but
he's a character actor.
he's definitely a character actor.
I'll give him that. But what were your
great
thoughts
performance.
of Culverton?
Great performance.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh my goodness. But yeah, we were talking about just creepy. Ugh. Like, that's the last thing you want a serial killer to be doing is running a hospital.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because that is basically just like handing them victims on a silver platter.
Well, you're
That is
literally
just
putting
the worst.
people like in his care.
Yeah. It's like
Their lives
like,
are in his hands.
Yeah, like Sweeney Todd and like
yeah.
But they made that
Demon Barber.
reference.
Yeah, they did make the reference, and I think for one episode, his character arc, the abilities of Toby Jones to portray this character and this villain of Culverton Smith was exceptional because, to go from this, like, okay, you're really creepy, are you a killer? Like, because in my personal opinion, I was like, well, is he a killer or is Sherlock just crazy? Like, I am genuinely questioning Sherlock's abilities here, and I don't know if it was because they set this up and he's in this drug-induced like state.
Like, is he just fixating on a celebrity?
And
Which is what we saw in the hospital scene when it was John, Sherlock, and Culverton in the hospital, and he said, "I'm questioning." Or somebody brought I can't remember who it was, brought the fact
like,
that,
what kind of doctor are you? Can you not tell your
Culverton
friend
kept bringing
is
that up,
super
that doubt
high?
in there, right?
Yeah.
Kept bringing that doubt in there, but I thought Toby Jones was great. I obviously like Moriarty better as a character. I think it's because we've known this character for so long, this Moriarty character, and he's still scary, even when he's not on the screen, because you don't know who's pulling any of these strings. At the end of the day, Moriarty could have been controlling Culverton
again, master manipulator
from the top down.
He's the puppet master.
I mean, if you think about the last episode into this, Moriarty was there from the beginning. Who to this Faith character, to all these pieces to Culverton, Moriarty was there the whole time.
Very true. It could have been.
I mean, the line of all the way down.
Yeah,
went back to Moriarty. They're all connected.
The 6 degrees of Moriarty.
It's Kevin Bacon.
Yes. I have 1 degree from him. Okay. But yes, we mentioned the hospital a little bit too. But like, what were your thoughts of this DD12 serum that memory inhibitor. Looks scary. Is pretty much the thing that kind of sets off the whole.
I feel like if he hadn't felt the need to drug his entire boardroom, he wouldn't have gotten into this predicament in the first place.
But okay, that's because we know that Culverton, as accused by Sherlock, that he's the serial killer that everyone knows. But why tell a whole board? I mean, I think.
The idea is that feeling this compulsion, that the perpetrator needs to confess at a certain point, and that was his whole shtick. Is once he's able to, he does all these things which he loves and enjoys, but ultimately he knows is wrong, so he does feel the need to confess it, but in a situation that he can control and make sure that there are no repercussions for. I don't know why you would call a group of people in.
Or your own daughter.
Yeah, including your own daughter. That just seems very short-sighted to me. And also, I would just assume that if you're going to confess to anybody, it would be kind of like the scenario that Sherlock sets up in the hospital, where it's just you're just confessing to one person who you intend to murder.
Yeah, I think that I think that you are hitting the nail on the head, because in the episode, Culverton himself, he says revealing a secret is the worst thing you can do to a friend if they don't accept it. You can't unsay it, which is exactly why he uses the serum to tell these people, because they're going to forget it anyway. So technically he can unsay it because of the serum.
It's I need to confess to people who I care about to some degree, my friends and family, but I also don't want to burden you with it, which is just he's a psychopath.
Right.
He might love his daughter, but ultimately he's a psychopath, and he's just justifying it to himself.
And this goes back to another way that they've portrayed a villain. We saw Moriarty. We never really saw Moriarty kill anybody off of his hand, from what I remember.
Yeah, he set up situations.
To kill anybody. We never saw Culverton actually kill anybody. So for him to be a serial killer, it was was he a serial killer, or did he just like the thrill of people believing that he was a serial killer?
You can definitely tell
that he
likes toying with people.
Yeah,
you can definitely tell that he likes toying with people.
Right.
Again, having all this money and power at his disposal. Anybody who threatens that or would even come close to uncovering his secret, he's going to toy with, like a cat and a mouse sort of situation. So when Sherlock calls him out, he just steers right into the skid and was like, yeah, this was all a promotional bit. Yeah, way to commit, though. That is a really great way to commit to the act.
How do you throw off somebody by not, as you said in the last episode, by hiding in plain sight? He was literally doing that. That's what made me think, okay, well, maybe Sherlock is a little crazy, because this man is literally being accused of being a serial killer. Instead of taking the defensive, which everybody would be like, well, he's being defensive, so of course he's a serial killer. He goes the opposite way, and he's like, well, I'm going to use it as a promotional thing.
I think a person who has money, fame, and power can do that.
That's true.
Well, yes, they can.
And
was anybody else getting weird Trump vibes at the beginning of this episode?
I didn't want to bring it up. I just came from the Trump. I was like, I didn't want to bring it up, but yeah.
That was literally my first thought. Was just
yes, they can.
I appreciated this because it is ambiguous, but just the way he was playing it up, it's like he's telegraphing, yeah, I did it, but there's absolutely nothing you can do about it.
Especially in that scene when he was with the kids.
Yeah.
When he was in the hospital with the kids, and he raised his hand and said, how do you catch a serial killer?
In front of the children.
In front of the kids.
And
you know what killed me even more is the nurse was like, maybe that's not the best topic. And then he has this thing, he has this running theme throughout the episode where if somebody challenges him, he goes, how long have you been working here? And they immediately shut up. That right there, as soon as that scene happened, up until then I was like, oh, maybe Sherlock is crazy, but as soon as he started doing that, the reverse psychology, underlying, under the radar threatening, I was like,
low-key threats,
yes,
yeah.
I was like, no, he's crazy.
Yeah, he likes to exert his power when necessary. That question, how do you catch a serial killer? It was kind of. I personally had a hard time watching this because the writing is great, but he says victim at random, expression of power, ego signature, human destruction. They like to hide in plain. I felt there was just a lot of factual things that were incorrect. I watched Criminal Minds.
Oh, Excuse us, Detective Marissa. Tell us.
I do the Criminal Minds after show, and I feel like they should watch a few episodes of Criminal Minds before.
Better let them know.
That's this guy's problem is like he does a lot of because he's so rich and powerful, he thinks he can do these cliche things and not get caught. I talking about Criminal Minds, I've been listening to a lot of the podcasts like My Favorite Murder, and and there are a lot of serial killers who do just that, hide in plain sight, because they have these like alter egos.
Yep. It's just something. Go watch the Criminal Minds. It's great.
Listen to My Favorite Murder.
Yeah. Check out our Criminal Minds after show. Self-plug. Alright, so I did enjoy this hospital scene. We will obviously get to Watson too, but it just kind of that build-up and that need to confess, especially when he took him to the mortuary room, which was
my favorite room.
Yeah, my favorite room.
It's like, okay, if you're not a serial killer, you're probably gonna become one.
Yeah.
Or like there's obviously something dark within him that
or you're a necrophiliac.
But then in the mortuary he does the same thing to the guy, to the what do they call those, the morticians.
Yeah.
And he's like, I need the room, and he's like, you're not allowed to be here, and he's like, how long have you worked here? I hated that. That's really, how long have you worked here? I could work here. What? Who are you?
Well,
I can't.
it says something super dark. And again, we find out later that he has like these secret passageways within the hospital. Yeah. It makes you wonder, like, what is he actively doing to like the staff and the board members to inspire so much fear? Because like, it's one thing to like own the place, but like people were legitimately afraid of him, and not in a I'm gonna lose my job sort of way, like this man could crush me like a bug sort of way.
Yeah. I think it's more like they're afraid of him because they know how powerful he is. Like he's so high in like just power status, and he's up on a pedestal. Like he has the keys to the hospital. There was a whole meeting about it, like a public announcement about it.
Like a ceremony.
Yeah, a ceremony. So like he has power over these people, so people don't want to question him in any way because he knows, like they know, that he can destroy them.
It's also entirely possible he just killed the janitor and took their keys.
Who knows? Who knows? Because we don't ever see him kill people.
Well, here's the thing. I don't necessarily think he would kill a janitor.
No.
I think that he kills like the people that are in the rooms.
The people that conceivably are on their way out.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So he's Dr. Kevorkian.
Thank you.
Yes. I thought of that as well. He says one of the lines, "Why do I kill? It's not about hatred or revenge. I'm not a dark person. Killing human beings, it just makes me incredibly happy." So he's also like a psychopath.
Right.
That's the stuff of nightmares.
He's like Charles Manson.
I feel like he's an amalgamation of so many different serial killers.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I love that they brought up H.H. Holmes. Any sort of serial killer that can create their own setting for all the for their murders, and then the disposal of their victims. That is what he has in this hospital.
Yeah.
And then we had the whole reveal of Faith walking in is not the Faith that Sherlock was expecting,
which like sends him like off the rails. He was like, wait, what?
If there's one thing Sherlock hates, it's being wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
Not only being wrong, but definitely being embarrassed.
Yes.
In front of Watson, who he believes he is smarter than.
Well, and he loves. They talk about it over and over again in this show. He loves putting on a show for Watson specifically. So, like, when he gets the rug pulled out from under him, when he's supposed to be Sherlock Holmes, solving the case, to down to the millisecond of like when this person is supposed to walk in. To show everyone how clever he is, it really does throw him off when something doesn't fall into the way he's calculated it happening.
Well, also, like, the way he was calculating was very cocky and overconfident. Like, oh, I forgot to, calculate the traffic. He kept showing off that, and he's like, oh, I'm still smarter than you, and I set all this up.
A couple scenes earlier, he knew who John Watson's therapist was going to be a week before John Watson decided he was going to switch up therapists.
Yes, let's get to this therapy.
Yeah, and I was sorry before we move on really quick because Meg jumped on that. Do we really think that Watson was? I mean, that Sherlock was caught off guard or embarrassed, or do we know that like because like you said, he knew John Watson's therapist 2 weeks before John Watson did. So, and then he, choreographically like established that John would bring the cane into the room at the end. So how would he have gotten into that room? What I'm saying is, like, I think that Sherlock wasn't exactly embarrassed or caught off guard. I think he knew exactly what was going to happen. I think he knew exactly that Faith was going to walk into the room wasn't the Faith that he was talking to.
I don't know about that, but we definitely know that he, given, again, what we find out later in the episode, that he needed to put himself into a position where John Watson needed to save him. He needed to put himself in a position where he was in danger.
I think with Sherlock, it's all probability. So I think that for him, Faith not being the Faith that he met at his house might have been an independent variable that he just
he didn't see
coming.
But then, like, as soon as he gets introduced to a new variable, he can work around that. He's like, okay, this is the plan.
Right.
Well, also, I think it was a little bit of embarrassment because we all know that he's also high. He's definitely
super high.
So it just shows like unprofessionalism, but like he's also just self-doubting himself, like how smart he thinks he actually is when he finds himself. He actually makes mistakes because of the drugs.
And I think that was a great. I think to your point that's a great addition to that character is that we've seen a very vulnerable apt to mistake Sherlock. We see Sherlock as Sherlock fans as like this perfect Sherlock Holmes. Never wrong. And there are opportunities for us to see him as a human being, that he does have feelings, like somebody said earlier, the emotional journey of this whole season, and a lot of Sherlock's emotions, we talk about it in the next episode, and the culmination of that. So we did see a very different Sherlock. I know I was reading Stephen Moffat, like the creators had said that this whole season set Sherlock up to be the Sherlock that he is right now. And so we're now getting this new, like before it was like, like the young Sherlock, and now this is the new, the updated Sherlock.
Yes. This therapy session, which I actually kind of really enjoyed, because we finally get our main two characters back together, because at the beginning of the episode, a lot of time has passed. We know that John has disconnected from Sherlock. There's like no relationship going on whatsoever. But the fact that these two are now forced to be together again, despite how hesitant John is over this, like, they still have to work together.
Not only do I like the therapy session for that reason, but it also reintroduces Mary as the character still involved in the show, because I thought they were just going to cut her out, like she wasn't going to be seen anymore, because after she had died in the last episode. So to see that John is still talking to her and that she still has a presence, whether that's just in John's head, made me feel really good that she was still around.
I do have to mention this. I personally, this is just my personal opinion, I can't stand it when you kill like a really great character in a show and you still see them like the next 5 episodes.
Really?
Because it just makes their death less impactful when they're still sticking around. I mean,
even if it's a specter.
Yeah, it's like, I love Mary. We talked about this whole last episode, and it was great to actually see her. And I'm like, oh, great, we still get to see her. But it just, like, the more you see a person who's supposed to be dead, it makes their death less impactful.
I kind of liked her running commentary. She had pretty spot-on commentary. But I agree with you. I think the most impactful way to have, like, a character who's dead appearing in somebody's mind is if they haven't really fully grasped that this person is gone yet, and the audience doesn't know that. Like, I love the way they did it in Scrubs, where it's like you're seeing this person who is already dead, but the audience doesn't know they're already dead, and then it's like a huge gut punch at the end of the episode.
Like The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
I don't know. I disagree with Marisa, because I'm like, I just feel like, yeah, we know Mary's dead. She's still around. It's like twisting the knife. Like every time she speaks, it's like, I really wish you were alive. I'm still here. I really wish you were alive. But I'm not.
Well, and not only she's basically telling him the whole episode, you have to let me go. You have to move on. You have to forgive yourself. You have to forgive Sherlock. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do any of those things.
No, but like the great thing, it was still great to see Mary in this episode, because she was basically Dr. Watson's inner ID, like his inner thought train, which I enjoyed. We got really Dr. Watson's mind.
Yeah, and
would you have felt the same way if it was just Mary's voice and not Mary physically?
Yes. because you always hear, you can always think of people and like what they're in your head, but like seeing them is, it was great on screen. But I think that would have been more, because it shows that she's physically not there, she is actually dead. So little audio cues here and there would be nice.
I agree with you to an extent, and I'm not sure how I feel about it personally, because I see both good things about having her here, and I also see like, well, there were other ways to go about showing the loss and remorse. But one thing I really did like is hearing, because she is an aspect of his internal monologue and his thought process, that she's making all these deductions that Sherlock would normally be making, and it just shows that spending time with Sherlock has trained Watson to think very deductively in a way.
He's rubbed off on him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't I completely agree with that, because he does think the same way as Sherlock. Like, Watson could be as smart as Sherlock, you know.
Yeah.
He's a doctor.
And we talked about it before we did the first show, which was the different types of Sherlock Holmes. You know, you got the movies, you got the old movies, and then CBS has their new show, not new, but their show Elementary. We love Elementary.
So great.
Lucy Liu but Lucy Liu's Dr. Watson is learning how to be like Sherlock. So this is a good look into what a future Dr. Watson would be like as a partner to Sherlock instead of just a sidekick to Sherlock.
Yeah, I said in the last episode that Sherlock directed a lot of his inner thoughts to Mary, and I thought that's why they had a good relationship, because Mary was smarter than John. But I feel like that's a discredit to John, so I apologize. I feel like, you guys are right. I think that that Sherlock has rubbed off on John, and that he is starting to be more aware and more calculative in his thinking.
Well, and everybody who within the framework of the show who looks at John's blog and sees Sherlock does see John as the sidekick and the guy who's sitting there very wide-eyed at how brilliant Sherlock is. We all know that John, he's there and he puts up with Sherlock, but it's not just this wide-eyed, astonished, wow, you're so smart every single time. But that's the perception, and you feel like Dr. Watson definitely does internalize that and resents it a lot. And you see that when they walk into the hospital together, and everyone is like, oh my gosh, Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and they're like, yay. So you can definitely tell that even the Mary stuff aside, like, that's something that continually bothers him. And
that's out of jealousy.
Probably.
It's like Batman and Robin.
Yeah, exactly. It's always getting relegated to the sidekick role when you do play a very valuable part.
You know who was also valuable in this episode? Mrs. Hudson.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought her
How
up.
awesome was she? She had like two really key scenes in this episode. Like, Mrs. Hudson, you are awesome. She is a great woman.
Yeah, you forget how she's just like, oh, would anyone like some tea? And you forget how freaking awesome she is to have lived this incredible life that she's led just to get to this point.
Yeah.
I loved how she crashed the therapy session driving with that awesome car.
Aston Martin. Like straight up James Bond stuff.
Being a widow of a drug dealer definitely has its perks.
Was it just me, or did anybody else expect Sherlock to get out of the car and not Mrs. Hudson? I was mind blown, Miss Hudson. I never expected her to.
Yeah, I was expecting Sherlock just because of the way he was driving.
Yeah.
Again, not the
so
car,
erratic.
but it was a crazy driver. You wouldn't think Mrs. Hudson is capable of that reckless driving.
I think I expected it to be Sherlock because when the therapist got out, when John and the therapist walked out of the house, she said, "Are you going to introduce me?" And by that point, we had not seen who was stepping out of the car.
Yeah.
We just saw somebody stepping out. So I was like, "Oh, of course it's Sherlock," because it was right after she talked about Sherlock. She was like, "Are you going to introduce me?" So we assumed it was going to be Sherlock.
One leads to the next.
Yeah.
I love Mrs. Hudson because she's one of the few people who can actually kind of control Sherlock in a way. Like one of the few people that Sherlock will actually listen to or like stop in his tracks to do something for someone, and she brings the nurturing side.
Right.
Yeah, it's great seeing somebody else being able to manipulate Sherlock. All she had to do was drop her teacup, and she was able to disarm him to the point where she could stuff him into the trunk of her Aston Martin.
Not only disarm him, but disarm him, handcuff him, and then
Hold
do
him
that.
at
And my
gunpoint.
favorite part was when she said
great.
about the handcuffs, like,
She's like, I've used them
before, and you're like,
wrote
Mrs.
them.
Hudson.
Now I need your
Get it, girl.
handcuffs. Now I need your handcuffs. I happen to know there's a pair in the salad drawer. I've borrowed them before. I'm like, Mrs. Hudson,
Hudson.
is there something you need to tell
Who's
us?
she knocking boots
And she's
with?
like, don't judge me.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you?
It's great, and she is the one who brings Sherlock to Watson, bringing them two together. I love it. But also back in, after the whole hospital scene, back in Sherlock's flat, 22 1B. When the guys go through, inspecting the place and stuff. But she also, we had her crazy fun moments scene, but then we had her real moments. She is a human. She does care about Sherlock and Watson, especially
She cares
with
about
Mary's
Watson a lot.
video.
Yeah.
Mary's video. We got the reveal of the rest of Mary's video. Apparently there's more. Save Watson. Save John Watson. What were your thoughts of this video?
Well, first of all, the video had "Miss Me" on it, so
Yes,
we were all. So I know I was like, "Oh man, this is trouble."
Yeah.
Because you just didn't know. Like we have been so conditioned as Sherlock viewers to see anytime that we see "Miss Me," we automatically associate it with Moriarty. So I was a little nervous for him. I didn't know what was going to happen.
Well, and not to mention at the end of the last episode, after the credits, we had just that little snippet from the video saying, "Go to hell, Sherlock."
Right.
And it's just like, whoa! Like, she died to save him. Why would she say that in any capacity? And so it was nice to get the full
Context.
monologue. Yeah, just like, you have to go to hell so that John Watson will save you.
Yeah.
Go right into hell and make it look like you mean it.
Right.
I really love this. I mean, and that just makes me like Mary even more, which makes me more upset knowing that she's dead. But the fact that she loves John so much to convince Sherlock to go to hell, do whatever craziness to save John, is to have him save you.
Now, here's a question. Put yourself in John Watson's shoes. And I'm sorry.
No. I'm just writing it down.
But put yourself in John Watson's shoes. If you saw this video of your significant other who's now departed telling your former best friend that, hey, you have to be nearly suicidal so that my husband will go and save you, would you feel like that was overtly being like manipulative? Because I would be like, why didn't you just send me a video saying get over it and forgive your friend, as opposed to concocting this big scenario where I get manipulated into forgiving somebody I'm not ready to forgive yet?
I don't think so at all, because John being around Mary and Sherlock, he knows he's going to get manipulated in some kind of way, so he's already used to it. But I feel like if Mary had just sent him a video, then it wouldn't have been as impactful. And I feel like John had a respect for Mary's decision, because in the end, I think that he realized that she was right in doing what she did and how she did it.
Yeah, and I don't think it's out of like, go be suicidal so he can save you. No, I don't think it was more like that. It's like, just get yourself into a situation bad enough where John can't help but save you.
Yeah.
And it's
I would feel
instinctful.
very manipulated.
No,
I think to John, I'm sure he did feel manipulated on some level, but at the same time, to what Tim said, I think that he does feel obligated. Like we said, he's a military doctor. His instinct is to save people that are close to him, regardless of the situation. He might not. He obviously hated this whole situation of being dragged around with Sherlock, going through this motions of doing all this stuff. But at the end of the day, his military doctor instincts kicked in, and he felt that he needed to save his friend, and that's what she was pushing him towards. Because, like we said, they got so far out of he pushed Mary's backstory out of the way, saying, I don't want any part of that. Let's start from where we are right now. I'm no longer a military doctor. Every bit of John Watson's training went out of the way for however long they were married. So she was getting him back to the old John Watson before Mary, which was that savior, that instinctive partner that Sherlock needed.
The kind of watching this and talking about it now, I'm wondering you know, very much what John Watson's state of mind is when watching this video, because he still feels really guilty about cheating on her too. And so, like, kind of seeing her, yeah, they're manipulating him, but at the same time, he can clearly tell that Mary, you know, he put her up on a pedestal when they first met, and then they found out about her past, but she put him up on a pedestal too. So he's feeling guilty about, you know, the man that Mary thought he was versus the man that he actually is. So I'm sure when he heard her say, you know, he will save you, but, like, you have to do this first, he probably feels really guilty about, like, his friends thinking that they needed to set up this scenario for him to save them in the first place.
Yeah.
Do you think Mary knew about
If you need him, I swear he will be there.
Yeah.
And it just shows, like, how much Mary actually does truly know Watson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that he won't ask for help, but he won't refuse it
Yeah,
either.
but he won't refuse it.
I wonder what triggered the release of the video. Like, who delivered this video? Where did this video come from? Like, where did Sherlock find this video?
That is a great question. Because it got
The first
mailed
one
to him.
lost
Yeah.
in the mail.
Right. Because
So-
she had made the video before the whole AJ thing happened, because she knew that AJ coming after her, there was a real possibility that she would be killed. So she made this video in order to...
But she made it once they went when?
Before AJ... she left to go find AJ.
Oh, so she
that
made a video
can say-
then.
Yeah, she made it before she went to go find AJ, because she knew that there was a possibility that she would die.
Right.
And she knew in whatever situation, whether it was AJ killed her or Miss Norbury killed her, that she was dead and that Sherlock would have to help Watson through it.
Right. So I'm just saying, how did it get to
Well,
Sherlock?
I feel like Mary, she's also very calculated. She knows, she can anticipate things. And kind of like Sherlock, you know how he can always kind of foresee things and have things set up. I feel Mary is capable of, like, having someone send a messenger already, like, on this date, send this video,
Yeah.
you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So I just feel that, like, I can accept it enough that Mary already sent it.
I'm with you,
Yeah.
Marissa.
It got to the right people.
That's all that matters.
All that matters. That's all that
But,
matters.
I mean, we haven't talked about it, but, I mean, Watson did also beat up Sherlock
Yes.
to a pretty severe degree, and then told him to his face, yes, I blame you for Mary's death. So, you know...
Did you believe that at that point?
That he believed that he blamed him?
That John was like, yes, you did kill my wife.
No.
I
no,
think-
he
I
didn't
don't think he believed it.
projecting a little bit again because of that internal guilt about having cheated on her just before she died.
But I also think it's not only because of his indiscretions. I also think it's because he left the protection of his wife in someone else's hands when he should have also been the person trying to protect his wife. Yeah. Like John Watson could have easily jumped in front of that bullet for Sherlock, but it took his wife to be instinctive like that to do that. So
John wasn't technically there at the scene yet. She got shot.
And then he came in.
Yeah, he didn't see it, so that's why
really?
Yeah.
They were all standing there. I thought Mycroft was there.
No.
I feel like everyone was there. The police were there.
Mycroft was there.
Mycroft
there too.
Why did the police do anything?
That's why I'm really frustrated that John would think that, yeah, Sherlock is the one who killed my wife. When there were so many witnesses who actually saw what happened, you'd think they would actually tell Watson the truth.
I could have sworn John was there.
No,
I thought he was there.
Rewatched
I
the
thought
episode
he was
because I
there
watched the
too.
first episode a few times. Mary got shot first, and then she was already lying on the floor.
And then John walked in?
walks
Well,
in.
we
Somebody said Watson was waiting for a sitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
And Watson
That's
runs
right,
in
because
afterwards.
he had to stay
So
for
Watson
Rosie.
didn't physically see the shooting, but with everyone there, Mycroft and the police and even Sherlock himself, you think those people, the actual witnesses, would tell John what happened. Therefore,
Well,
John wouldn't say,
Not
sure
to
they did.
mention,
you killed
the
my wife.
police should have gotten the civilians to safety as they were surrounding the perp. And then if the civilian did get shot, that aren't
Okay.
police trained in some sort of medical training? That's last episode,
That's episode
but
one.
it's making me angry now that I think about it.
Back to this
Get
one.
it together, British police
The
force.
Bladcast says this episode is the perfect union of Moffat and Gaddis, the creators, which happens too rarely on Doctor Who, but when it does, it's perfect. Like this episode of Sherlock, which, yeah, this was a
think this
perfect
episode
episode
was
of Sherlock.
Yeah, getting down to the climactic scene at the end of where I was going to say Toby, where Culverton slips in through his secret passage doors.
So creepy.
Actually,
so creepy.
almost suffocating Sherlock. Well, he was suffocating, but like successful. That was scary.
That was scary.
It was
And I really
creepy.
love the confession that happened before that whole him trying to suffocate Sherlock. I loved how he was overdosing him on the IV drip, and then he was like, you know what, this is taking too long, so this is what's gonna happen. Like, I was like,
But I want to hear
whoa.
you say, I don't want to die
Yes.
first. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, God. I really appreciated the fact that even though there was a tape recorder in there, they made a point about tape recordings not being admissible in court. Like, I really liked that, like, they took that aspect of it. And Sherlock knew that, but just having that one bit on a recording and getting this man into a police station was enough to just get him to confess everything.
But I mean, what we said earlier in this episode, he wanted to confess. He was like aching to confess to somebody. So at this point, he was already caught red-handed, literally. So he just
he was
confessed.
just bursting at the seams.
Yeah, he
He's
just let
like,
it out.
I just gotta tell somebody.
Yeah, I love the whole number 3 theory. It's like everyone stops after 3.
Oh yes, that was
Something's
very
comforting
clever.
about
Yeah.
the number 3.
It is a number of completion.
It is. That's very true. But yeah, I thought it was very, very intelligent, of course, of Sherlock already pre-planning 3 weeks ahead that Watson would bring the cane into his room as a parting gift that would have a recording device in it.
Yeah, that's a little weird to me.
Just a little too pre-planned.
It's a little too pre-planned.
But I'll accept it because Sherlock is brilliant.
Right.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
we
exactly.
didn't question it when it happened.
Yeah.
But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like,
How long
Sherlock
has
is
that
capable
device
of a
been
lot.
recording
Right.
Watson's conversation?
Right.
I think I wouldn't have believed it if Culverton hadn't looked for the other devices. Like, if he was like, oh, I wouldn't even have thought, like, a recording device was in this room. Like, then I would have been like, come on, guys. But he was like, I already searched all the recording devices, and Sherlock was like, they didn't. So that's what,
That's
I think
cute.
that's what made me a little bit more, like, believable toward,
somebody said, why? I was seriously hoping, why do people always stop counting at 3 to mean we get a 4th episode this season? That would be great. What if they just surprise us with another episode this season? Like, out of the blue, and we're like, what do we do?
We're actually not done yet. Oh my god, we would
Miss
freak
me?
out. Be like, oh, we got
Happy Valentine's Day,
Right.
everybody. Here you go.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That would
I mean, we got a
Valentine's
Christmas
Day
special,
episode, yeah.
which maybe we should retroactively go back and cover. Just saying.
Yeah,
Not
the
to
Abominable
side note
Bride,
something
right?
like that, but totally.
We'll do a
but yeah,
4th hour.
If we got another episode, I'd take it. I would take it. I mean, granted, we had to wait 3 years for just these 3 episodes that came and gone in 3 weeks. Yeah, I sure hope we don't have to wait another 3 years.
Isn't this the end, though?
I was about to
They-
say,
they're
there's
speculating
rumors,
it.
that
We'll
this
get
was...
to it.
I heard that this was it.
We'll get it. We still have another
Well,
episode to
we do,
cover.
we
Meg.
do.
Let's not cut
Yeah,
it short.
we'll get to
Cool your
that.
jets.
But I did enjoy the ending of this episode, and of course,
Enjoy the ending? That's a
Well,
little
no,
underwhelming, Marissa.
still talking. the climactic scene of the whole reveal, catching him, because I think the great thing about Culverton is that he is just another civilian in public, so it just makes you question. There's so many regular people, quote
Just
unquote
like him.
regular people out there that are serial killers who are
Yeah.
literally in hiding in plain sight.
And-
I used to watch The Following on Fox.
Ooh, that was a good show.
Let me tell y'all what.
pretty
This is why I don't go out in crowds anymore. People are like, you want to go to the Women's March? And I'm like,
No.
no. Like, I want to, be there, but no, people just
I'll
getting,
hashtag.
right. People getting slashed all over the place. You watch The Following. You can't trust anybody these days.
Very, very, very true.
And to your point, like it was really nice to get a criminal who didn't necessarily play into the larger picture, because we've been dealing with these masterminds
Right.
for so long. It's nice to just kind of have one kind of normal, quote unquote, normal creep to take down.
Or just like another regular civilian. That could be any one of us. And I think that's what makes it more scary.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to talk about the
Yes!
end. The reveal of the sister. Did you see this coming?
No.
That could have been the title of the episode.
Yes.
The reveal of
of
the
the
sister.
Well, that would have given it away.
You're
This is, like I said, I'm kind of
Seriously.
upset. On the one hand, it's super cool, but I was like, oh man, like I really liked that scene at the beginning with it just being, you know, Faith and Sherlock, I didn't necessarily like that we had, like, that this whole thing was concocted by the other Holmes sibling. That to me seemed a little bit, kind of like seeing the recording device in John Watson's Cane. This is one of those things where it's like, okay, this is like a Xanatos gambit where there's no way you could really predict all of these things perfectly falling into place.
Maybe you could, because we know Sherlock is brilliant and he can calculate all these things, but it makes it more scary knowing that the sister can plan so much, even more than what Sherlock is capable of.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think you hit the nail on the head, because we say that, oh yeah, Sherlock is so calculated, he can plan things two weeks in advance. His sister could take it one step further and plan things months in advance, and then go undercover as, you know, the girl that Watson's flirting with, and then the therapist, and then the Faith, and then all this. It's like, I was not expecting that at all.
I have to say that, like, it was, I loved her point about, you know, nobody notices someone like her, because she was able to take on all these different personas, and I, as a viewer, didn't notice that it was the same actress every single time.
No.
And that actress, from what we understand, is that actress actually had to audition for all three different characters. She didn't know they were one character until the end, and they ended up telling her that she was one character.
Again, it really shows her acting chops.
Yeah, and the actress Sia, I believe, actually worked with Benedict Cumberbatch when he did another Shakespearean show.
I was just going to say, calculated people are the most predictable, though. So, and Sherlock, as being as calculated as he is, I'm sure his sister Euros, who's equally as calculated, predicted Sherlock's moves, so and knew that he would do this, so because he is so predictable.
Yeah, I think the reveal was just like physically scary to watch, knowing just how again with the cinematography, it just got super dark. Like visually, the light got dark, it got dimmer, the atmosphere got darker. She revealed the taking out the contacts. Just
and then
physically,
she had the two color eyes.
Yeah,
it's like
physically,
Dementors.
she looked scary.
Yeah.
And it was just a very intimidating scene.
And for a little while, you're seeing, like, the light reflect off of her glasses lenses. Like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. You must have totally mentioned it earlier. I really love it when they do that, where, you know, it's just the light reflecting off of someone's glasses so that their eyes are obscured. Yes. Because, again, eyes are the windows to the soul, and so it's really cool
when you don't have eyes or soulless.
Yeah. I think that you touched on a really good subject that we didn't talk about. Watson was the one who kind of caught on to it. When he, like, let that detail, she let that detail slip, and he was like, I didn't tell you about that. And she was like, oh, you must have mentioned it in a preview. And he was like, no, I didn't. Like, something's not right. So this just goes to prove, like, you know, Sherlock is rubbing off on John.
He's smarter than people give him credit for.
Yeah.
John also knows Sherlock so well because he's talking to Mycroft, and Mycroft's like, you were talking about someone else. You weren't talking about Sherlock.
And Mycroft had already let slip earlier on in the episode, either the last episode or this episode, that there was another Sherlock Holmes sibling.
Is it bad? Maybe a little sexist that we all thought it was a brother and not a sister.
Well, that's what they made. That's the way they made it sound like.
And she said it, but I'm just asking in general.
I think that's the rule of threes. I mean, no, seriously.
Three brothers.
They already mentioned it twice, and then when it came to the third time, that's when we got our reveal, where we automatically, on the third time, we thought it was going to be a guy. It's actually a girl. It's a sister.
It seems like there's been a conscious effort, both in the Christmas special and in this one, where I think there's been a lot of controversy in the previous seasons as to how female characters have been portrayed, and I feel like making the other Holmes sibling a woman and again, kind of like, without really diving into the Abominable Bride, but like the themes kind of touched on in there and the morals touched on in there are kind of going like, okay, fan base, we're listening. Here's an awesome female villain. Enjoy.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I do, because we get a lot of males, just in, not just Sherlock, but a lot of stories. It's not to call out, like, make this a gender issue, but most killers are male.
Right.
Most serial
that's
killers
true.
are
No,
male.
statistically
It's
speaking, yeah, you're right.
It's actually, statistically proven that most killers or murderers are male.
And maybe that's why
so
in
I think we're just conditioned to think it's a male.
in the CBS version of Sherlock Elementary, Moriarty is a male. I mean, he's a female. I'm sorry, he's a
Yes.
female. So
Which is
Or
great.
no, Watson?
Watson is a female.
Watson is a female.
Moriarty's a
They have-
female.
they,
So
they spin it quite
Yeah,
quick.
Love it.
not to get into spoiler territory with that, but I really like the way they went about doing that reveal
in Elementary.
in Elementary. So
love that.
yeah, I am all for it here as well.
Okay, and quickly before we wrap up, because we do have to mention this as well, Irene Adler,
Oh,
question mark, text message.
The texting.
Happy birthday, Sherlock.
Oh.
But I did also like the reconciliation between Sherlock and Watson during this because I thought it was good.
Yeah, and I liked that Sherlock, takes what John Watson has to say, because he's like, no, I don't. That thing about emotion, no, I don't care. She can text me all she wants. I never text back. And Watson's like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Cherish what you have, before it's too late. And then Sherlock goes, okay, well, I do text her every now and then. That's fine.
Just text her, phone her, do something while there's still a chance, because that chance doesn't last forever. Trust me, Sherlock, it's gone before you know it. Before you know it. But that just shows
Watson.
bromance, man. It's great.
And here's poor Molly. Can't even get a text back.
Oh,
Just saying.
We'll get into
Just
Molly.
saying.
Don't
we'll
worry.
talk about that.
But anything else about this episode?
Just that it was
I really
a nice. It was a nice one-off with a pretty awesome
Setup for the next one.
setup for the
Yeah,
next one.
it was
Yes.
creepy to know that he has a sister, but it's also really exciting to know that there is another just demented, like, as
Holmes.
calculated,
Yeah.
Holmes out there.
But there's no Holmes other than Sherlock that we like. We don't like Mycroft.
I actually
really
liked.
I meant like we love to hate Mycroft.
Yeah,
like he's like a
understand, yes.
hateable
I
character.
feel
You're
like,
like,
he's the long-suffering older brother. I don't hate.
but you never know who's he's on Sherlock's side. But then you're like, do you want him to
You
fail?
know
Like,
he's looking out for Sherlock,
Right.
but like at the same time you're like, you're a bad older brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before we wrap, two quick facts for Easter eggs trivia. Holmes fans know that the Great Detective was actually born on January 6th, 1854, and the Lying Detective, this actual episode, aired on January 8th, so it's around the actual time of real Sherlock Holmes' birthday. And once more, Unto the Breach, when Holmes was all like shooting at the wall, reciting Henry V, that's actually that's the whole spiel he was doing for this. Once more, Unto the Breach, which is the opening line of the famous soliloquy
Nice.
in Henry V.
look at that. We are giving
Yeah.
you guys some facts.
And yeah, in Henry V, that's actually the first reference to afoot, and that's where Sherlock says the game is afoot.
Oh.
Ooh.
That's the tie into the Henry V. All right, great episode. In the meantime, where can everyone keep following you?
Awesome. I am Timothy Michael. You can follow me on all social media platforms at I am Timothy Mike.
I'm Megan Salinas. You guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at the Menguin. That's TheMenguin. I am also on a bunch of shows here at AfterBuzz, and I write articles for the Movie Chick. That's Chick with 2 Ks. Be sure to check those out.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Drexel Heard.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV. You can follow all of us here, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those fun social media platforms at AfterBuzz TV. Keep rating, keep commenting, keep subscribing. We're still talking about Sherlock. We have one more episode left. Until then, we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.